Hey, welcome everybody. It's a Friday evening and we've got a few minutes to be together. It's an odd way to be together. We get a few minutes to be together and hope you've had a great day. Used to be Friday was payday. Did you ever get paid on Friday? You did? Yeah. What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, that's the only time I've been paid.
I still do.
You still get paid on Friday? Wow, how sweet.
Today was payday.
Oh, you guys, really?
Oh, yeah.
You bring your checks with you?
You asked that question like people get paid on Mondays or something.
Well, I get paid on Sundays. I can't figure out why everybody else doesn't get paid on Sundays.
But I have direct deposit, so we get paid like Friday morning now.
Okay, Trevor, we're not all as contemporary as you are. I still get a paper.
I would
in
like
an
to
envelope.
see how many people in the chat get paid
Okay,
direct
whatever.
deposit, because that would be
play these.
90%.
We're glad you're here, whether or not you got paid today or not. And these are my friends, Stephanie and Daniel. That's the way I wanted to say Daniel and Stephanie, but it just seems right to say Stephanie and Daniel Glenn. And Stephanie was here a while back with Ken Hollis, you remember? And she's a marriage and family therapist. Mm-hmm. And so she knows the material tonight we're going to deal with inside and out. And Daniel, on the other hand, is about to graduate from a PA program, and he knows the body inside and out. So we have the professional body man, and we have the professional mental, spiritual, relational lady with us. So it's a perfect combination, isn't it?
Full package.
And I want to say hi to John Glenn and Jean. Glad you're here tonight watching from Illinois. Excuse me, that's Daniel's mom and dad. And hello to Tim and Stephanie, Tim and Leah, and Lisa Walls, and Pam Pierce, and all the people that are watching Stephanie. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's sweet. And all of my family that's not here, hello to you too, But so it's good. We're going to just have a conversation. We hope you'll engage with us in the conversation. Anything Daniel, want to say anything before we get started?
It's my first time on camera, so we'll
Hey,
see how this goes.
Mama, speak to Gene, Glenn for a minute and say, Gene, this is the first time he's been on stage since he was married here. He was standing in almost exactly the same place. Yep. You want to try to see what it feels like? Yeah. Dearly beloved, we're gathered together in the sight of God and the presence of these witnesses to join together this man and that woman in holy matrimony. Okay, you can sit down now. Anyway, that's where he was standing last time, and it was special. It was special. And so tonight, I want to get a young couple because I wanted to have a conversation. On Tuesday night when we did Hang with Harry, we got over for a few minutes in the conversation about love languages. And seemed to be a lot of interest in that, so thought, hey, these guys have worked through the love language quiz and they've had conversations about it over the last
Almost 3 years.
Yeah.
Almost 3 years. Stephanie has talked about a lot, hasn't she, Daniel? We're not going to let her talk yet. How much has she talked about it?
She loves it. It's part of her job, so she talks about it from work, but then also with us, like our marriage and all that. So
Really?
it's helpful.
Do you use love languages at your work?
Every now and then I will with specifically like children, helping parents see that children also have love languages. And, they'll think like, oh, I'm doing this and this over and over again. I'm buying these things over and over again, but the kid really wants time with the parent or words of affirmation, something else.
You see what she's doing? She's already taken over the show. That happens, doesn't it, Daniel?
Mm-hmm. Y'all can leave if you want.
We would acknowledge, first of all, that sometimes when you think you've said to somebody, I love you, they didn't necessarily hear that.
Right.
And part of the whole premise of this love language thing is that you can say it and we don't get it, or somebody can be saying it to you and you don't hear it. Mm-hmm. Anything you want? Have you had that kind of experience? Have you found yourself trying to express love or receive love and feel like, man, it's just not jiving for me? But anything you want to talk about that? Can you tell me an illustration about that?
Like with each other or just in general?
Either one, Steph.
Yeah.
Either one.
Do you want me? I do talk a lot, but I can't.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just don't want to take over. I know I have a lot of friends who, like, if their love language is quality time, that is not mine. But if I'm a words of affirmation, I want to constantly give them all the words of affirmation and tell them that they're the most amazing thing ever and write them notes about how amazing they are. But really what they want is for me to come with them somewhere and just spend undivided time with them. So having to be like, I gotta not go so hard with the words right now. I've got to
Okay.
spend more time with you.
Okay, let's stop for a minute, Daniel, because she's going to have this surgery over before we ever get the patient cut, you know,
Right.
so we need to cut on the patient. Trev, anybody want to talk yet? Hey, we want to hear you from you guys along the way. We'll stop. We will absolutely stop. I'll make Stephanie be quiet.
Obviously,
Daniel.
Bob McCabe has already asked, is Steph's love language words of affirmation?
It's second.
That's
Very
the
close
second one?
yeah.
Okay.
Ask Bob McCabe. Bob McCabe, what do you think the first one is? Since you're so observant, you should also know what her first language is. If you get it, I will be overly impressed.
I will too.
Julie says Mike's is words of affirmation and physical touch. Mine is quality time and acts of service.
Wow, there's a huge illustration. First of all, let's take just a minute and say, Gary Smalley, a number of years ago, I don't know when, do you know when, Steph? Wrote the book entitled The 5 Languages of Love. By the way, you can look up, Google, I would encourage you to Google quizzes dash the 5 love languages. And there's a great quiz there that you can take as a couple, as a single, as a teen, or as a child. And it's very insightful. At the bottom, it'll give you percentages of these different languages. And it's a fun experience, particularly if you're in a relationship with another person. Maybe it's a marriage, maybe it's a dating relationship, maybe it's a working relationship. It's pretty helpful to recognize what your love language is. So basically, Gary Smalley said there are 5 different ways that we express love to one another, and so we're going to take turn sharing them. Don't share yours, but share a different one. Okay, Daniel, tell us one.
So there's acts of service, which someone mentioned. There's gifts and words of affirmation, physical touch. What's the 5th one?
Jimmy said, I don't want to talk too much.
What's the 5th one? I don't remember the
Quality
5th one.
time.
Quality time, yeah. Which I
So
should-
talk to us about
I
acts of
should know
service.
that.
Tell acts of service.
So I think that's not one of mine personally, but I think that's mostly probably if someone feels most loved when other people kind of like take care of something for them, like especially if they're stressed or maybe they have a lot on their plate or something, and somebody comes in and does an errand for them or picks something up from the grocery store or something like that, like an act of service, something that kind of relieves stress on them. That's how they feel loved.
I wonder-
or mow the lawn or something like that.
I wonder how many, and I'm being serious with this question, I wonder how many wives would feel hugely loved if their husbands did a few more acts of service around the house. You know, I've heard women complain, he doesn't pick up his clothes, he blah, 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 he doesn't put his dishes in the sink, whatever. And so you begin to say a simple act of service can many times be a huge expression of love. I mean, you didn't say I love you, you didn't bring flowers and a bouquet, but you took the time to do this kind, simple deed that just seems to communicate. Okay, Steph, choose one and talk about it. Any one you want.
I'll do quality time. Quality time is, a lot of times you think, oh, if I'm sitting next to you, then that's good. But quality time is uninterrupted, very focused time with that individual. So I'm not sitting next to you on my phone, or I'm not sitting next to you while I'm watching TV and just not talking to you at all or acknowledging you.
That's not
But
quality time?
If you're not at all like engaged with
If
that
you're just sitting
person.
together watching TV, that's not quality time.
Because you're not having that connection with that person, and,
Sure.
and maybe for some people it may just be having like a warm body. But from my experience with it, and for him, it's like, hey, I'm gonna go plan something for us to go do together, and go take a drive somewhere where we can just talk, or an event that I know you would really like to do with me. Just
I love
being
that. In fact, I
intentional.
wanted to just push you to define it like you're
Yeah.
defining it, which saying being in the same room together is not necessarily quality time.
Right. Some people may define it differently in that. Yeah.
Boy,
Especially not nowadays, because there's too many distractions.
Oh,
with,
my
goodness. yeah.
Especially your phone. Like that's,
Yeah.
Jeannie's is quality time, my wife. And so I've learned a lot about making sure I do a better job with engaging when I am around her. Still not great at it, but it's good to be even talking about this tonight to kind of help me even in that, because that's what I need to be doing for her, is spending that quality time.
man, I think already in the evening, and I love the way this goes. You know, it's just a simple conversation, guys. But I already love the fact that we're kind of. I hear something new about defining quality time. It's not just time. It's looking, talking, interacting, being together intentionally, not just being in the same room again, because I feel like sometimes we can be in the same room and not be having significant quality time with one another.
Exactly.
Right.
So, so Bob asked, does it matter if there's two love languages? Like, talk about that for a second, Harry, because we really didn't touch on that. We just kind
Yeah,
of
we've not
assumed
completed that.
everyone
Yeah.
knew that. Yeah.
In fact, typically there's a primary and a secondary way that you show and receive love. So I think it doesn't matter that there are two. In fact, there probably are two. In fact, all five of those probably apply to everyone. Who doesn't want a gift or want to be served or want to be spoken well of or be touched? Well, I bumped into a few people that don't want to be touched, or have time spent with them. So if you're interested in a loving relationship, probably every one of those are valuable. You guys agree with that?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
You have a little bit of each.
yeah, have a little
But
bit
there's
of
always
each.
one that's probably predominant.
Yeah, and maybe a secondary one that's close, you know? So we've talked about acts of service and quality time, and I'll choose what was forever a big one for me, which is touch. And that is just
Really?
touch.
Yours is touch? Really?
It's one of my...
That was sarcasm, by the way.
It's one of my first two, you know. Actually, physical touch, which means touch. I mean, a peck on the cheek,
The famous Harry Carey shoulder slap.
a
you know?
shoulder slap, a
Kidney slap, Ben says.
kissing me, giving me a hug, sometimes shaking your hand, anything that says all the way to a full expression of romantic love between husband and wife. That's all, man, all that is part of the touch piece, you know, and there are people that really feel loved when you touch them. And I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Now we got two more. What else we need to talk about? Acts of service, quality time, touch. Talk to us about gifts, Daniel.
Gifts. So we've talked about this before. It's just like a gift could be for a holiday, or a birthday, anything like that, where not that you expect it, but it's kind of like the times that you expect to receive a gift. And those can be really thoughtful gifts, and that means a lot too. But I think when we're talking about the love language, it's just maybe a small thing in the middle of the week. Like if someone really likes ice cream or something, you stop at the grocery store on the way home from work and grab their favorite ice cream. Just like a simple little thing that, I mean, in the grand scheme of things doesn't mean a lot, and it'll be gone maybe in the next few days. But
So it's not necessarily the huge gift that you would save up to buy at Christmas time or whatever.
it's just something that
a simple touch.
you took the thought and it actually means something. Like it has meaning, even if it's how small or how big it is. But it means something like between you and the person you're giving it to.
It's interesting to me that when we came together tonight, based I think on Tuesday night's little video thing, Steph brought in her purse a card that Nathan had made for her on her 16th birthday, which was 10 years ago. And the words were somewhat valuable, but the artwork was really what made it valuable. And so it was enough of a gift. Didn't cost a thing, but she has just kind of held on to it. And that's a sweet piece, you know, along the way. So now we got one more to talk about.
Affirmation. Do we do that one yet?
Words of affirmation.
We did. No, tell us about words of affirmation.
It's
That happens to be yours, doesn't it?
It's my secondary.
Secondary, okay.
Secondary. Words of affirmation, taking time to specifically identify things that you like about that person or that you appreciate about that person. That's how you feel it. So if he comes to me and compliments me specifically, like, hey, you know, this was really something awesome that you did today. I think that's great. Or I'm so proud of you for how you did this. You handled this very well. Just lots of encouragement, lots of verbal encouragement, and letting that person know how much you appreciate them for what they did. Yeah, that all.
Yeah, okay.
That's it.
I like one word she added in there. I think it's important in the whole definition, as you call it, verbal encouragement. It can be written, of course.
Right.
You know, you can write a note and say, man, I think you're gorgeous today. When you left the house, I didn't want you to ever leave, and I want you to come back as soon as you can. Can't wait to brag on you some more when you get home, because words of affirmation, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But it can be verbal. It needs to. It's not enough. It's not enough to think it. You have to express it in some way. You have to say it. You have to write it down. You have to send a text. You have to send a photo. You have to somehow. You have to. So you basically have 5 different ways that Dr. Smalley would say you can use to communicate love: physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, and gifts. And those 5 vary from person to person to person to person. And a lot of times there's a mixture. We're not purely one. Typically there's 1 or 2 that are strong, and other people have kind of even numbers all the way across the board, but we're typically, so let's talk about what ours are, okay? Daniel, I'll let you go first.
So my number one is quality time, and then close second is words of affirmation.
Okay, let's talk about what's going to happen. Daniel's about to go on the 17th on a 2-week rotation in the final practical side of his PA training. He's about to go on a 2-week rotation to Paducah. That's a lot of quality time away from your girl.
Right.
You know, how do you anticipate getting through that, man?
Probably talking on the phone a lot, just because that's my second, as I said, words of affirmation. So like, if you can supplement, I guess you can supplement. The love
You need to ask Bob if that's okay. I don't know if you can really supplement a primary with a secondary,
Right.
but yeah, when you think about how important for you that time is,
Right.
and that you'll have a 2-week period of time where you're separated by 4 or 5 hours.
Right,
And,
but quality time can be done over the phone. Like,
Sure.
if we're talking on the phone when we're apart, but she's genuinely listening to me, she's not like multitasking, doing other things while on the phone. Like if she's actually just sitting down, genuinely listening to me, hearing about my day, talking about life, that kind of thing, that's quality time. I mean, we may not be face-to-face, which is ideal, but you can still get quality time with your spouse, your girlfriend, boyfriend, your child, anything. If you're just talking to them, genuinely listening, rather than distracted.
Did you hear a word in there? You guys are using great words. It's helping me a lot tonight in this conversation. You said, not necessarily multitasking.
Right.
Quality time. Man, how many of us, all of us, are trying to engage with somebody in a significant way, and all the time we're trying to do something else, or we're distracted in some other kind of way. And we say, well, you can't perfectly be engaged every single time, but man, if your primary communication with one another never has those moments where you're not multitasking,
Right.
then man, it's easy to feel like, I don't have your attention.
Right.
You know, you're busy doing something else.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel like love, does it?
No, because a lot of times you can tell. I mean, you can, if you're on the phone with somebody, or if you're with them, obviously you can see them. If they're on their phone while they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's nice about your day, but they're on their phone doing other stuff, or if you're on the phone, you can tell if people are not really paying attention, or that kind of
So
thing.
how does it make you feel when that happens?
Well, it stinks. I mean, sometimes
It stinks,
it's like,
okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is like, okay, well, either what I'm saying doesn't matter, or what I'm saying isn't real important. So I think that's a big thing too. Is I feel loved if what I'm saying seems important to the person I'm talking to. Like
Okay.
if they don't have to actually be interested in it genuinely, or they don't have to be interested as like their personal interest, but if they're looking at me, talking to me, and listening to me, then they're obviously showing that what I'm talking about matters
Wow.
in that moment. At
Well,
least.
now, we have John Glenn, not the astronaut, and Jean, John's wife, hopefully watching somewhere on a computer or cell phone. And man, if you have any comments about Daniel and his need for quality time and words of affirmation, just type them, share them with us, because he's got a little nervous look in his eye right now.
I've wondered about that, because I wondered like an Enneagram, your number can change throughout your life. But I've wondered that about love languages, like, did I have different love languages?
Yeah,
when
I
was
think
a
mine's
kid
changed.
or
I'm
something
going
like
to change.
that?
I'm going to share
Yeah.
mine. I think mine's changed a little bit. So,
Right.
okay. So yours is quality time
Quality time.
with a secondary
Words of
words of
affirmation.
affirmation.
Yeah.
Sometimes those are pretty. Well, all of them are. That's pretty close. Okay.
Yeah.
So Bob's helping us tonight. He says, how does Stephanie create quality time for him? Like, do you recognize that? Do you find yourself recognizing that stuff? Like
That
how
like he needs.
yeah, that
quality
he
time.
needs that quality time.
Yeah, I'm obviously not all the time.
Right,
There's a lot of times where I'm like, I'm not doing the best.
Wait a
I
minute.
can
How are
right
you
now.
again? Okay.
I don't care. But like I'll notice some nights I'm like, I'm just gonna, and I don't need to do this more, but I just need to like go put my phone in the other room, because even if I'm not on it, if it lights up, it gets distracting, or if someone's calling me, I'm like, oh, I don't need to get that. So putting that in the other room, we'll do some nights where I'm like, okay, I'm going to just fully be engaged with you. If I make him a dinner and just put it on the table and like we're gonna sit together and just talk, and we're just gonna talk about the day. When I come home, I try to talk to him before I just start taking my purse off, putting my keys down, just try to go and just sit with him and talk about how his day was before because mine, I talk a lot, I want to just unload all the things from my day, because sometimes it's stressful at work. I'm like, I just want to just kind of let it all out, which he is so good at accepting that, but I also want to like listen to what, has been going on in his day too. But
That's great.
awareness.
That's great. Bob's helping us. Bob's ahead
Thanks,
of the game. Bob's ahead of the game, and thank you, Bob. But we're going to listen. Steph, your second is words of
Words.
affirmation. What's your first one?
Physical touch.
Physical touch. Okay. That's interesting. Tell us about that. I mean, what do you want to know about that? So you're a toucher.
Oh yeah.
We'll talk about that more in a
Big
minute, but you're a toucher.
Yeah.
And so touch means something to you.
It's another way. It's almost kind of affirming. It's almost kind of like it's a message to me, like we're okay. We're good. If we're watching TV at night, or if we're just sitting there, it's like I've got to have something touching. Like my foot will just kind of drift
Really?
over, or I'll just kind of somehow we have to be connected at some way.
We have a sectional couch at home, so there's plenty of space for friends, family, all of that. But if
You guys have one cushion worn out,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
she wants to sit right next to me, which is fine. But just physical touch is not mine, so it's not like I seek that out.
Okay, how low is your number of physical touch, do you know?
I think it's 3. At first,
Oh,
I
my
did
goodness.
believe it was one of my first 2.
Yeah.
But after talking throughout the past 3 years and learning from her, talking about it, she notices it more. It's not as much physical touch for me. Like if we're in public, I hate PDA, that kind of thing. Like
It makes him so uncomfortable.
I'll hold her hand and all that, but it's just like, I don't know. I'm just too shy for that, I guess. But for her, physical touch is definitely like, it doesn't have to be intimacy, like you said, between a man and wife, but like just holding her hand, or if we're driving in the car, just having my hand on her leg, or I don't know, like rubbing her shoulders at night, or it could be a simple touch. It doesn't have to be a hug. Doesn't have to be a kiss. Right.
Wow. Okay, well, we really talked about it yet. There's a lot to talk about with this whole idea, but you can see what begins to happen here. Stephanie loves physical touch. Well, Daniel primarily loves quality time. And those can fit together, but they're together, and she's all about touch. He's not as much of a toucher as she is.
Right.
And so she's touchy-feely, and he's kind of like, whew, give me just a little, he probably would never say that, but it's a little awkward to realize your language and my language are a little bit different.
Right.
But
And
I wonder for Dan, over the years of being married and dating and all that, like, do you feel like that maybe moved closer for you in terms of you used to be, man, I just don't like the touch thing at all, and
Right.
now it's probably grown a little bit closer to that 1 and 2 level?
I think
don't know,
so.
I'm just wondering,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I do think so. I think so. Like talking to Steph is like because like I said, I don't like PDA, but if we're at home,
wait a minute, you need to explain for this audience what PDA
like
is.
kissing,
No, like-
hugging
yeah.
in public. Like I don't
It's
know.
called a public
Public-
display
yeah,
of
sorry.
affection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I think just like at home, like I like physical touch as well. But Steph kind of has explained it to me in the past. It's just like, but yeah, I mean, she's my wife, so of course, like any other spouse, you want a physical touch with your
Yeah.
spouse. So that may not be the love language. Just because you like physical touch doesn't mean it's your love language. But I think definitely like what Trevor said, I think being married to somebody who is physical touch as their primary love language, I think it's grown for me just because I see how she feels loved,
Right.
and I can see how I feel loved as well with it.
In that process.
Yeah.
So when you guys go to bed at night, does she have to be touching you with her leg, or her foot
Yeah,
has
her
to be?
cold foot. Yeah.
She said, I can do without that touch. Please don't do that. I tell Anita, would you please put socks on? She's like,
No, that's
do
the
you
worst.
don't you love me? I'm like,
Right.
Don't
Dude,
you love me, right?
get
Don't you
off
love
me,
me?
get
Do you
off
hate
me.
me now or something?
yeah, so yeah, okay. But you can see as a couple, I remember a couple, and they still come to our church. And in fact, I'm not going to tell you their full names, but their last name's Richard and Benita Berry, And Richard and Benita, yeah. Oh, did I mention it was Richard and Benita Berry? Richard Berry is a toucher, and Benita was a gift giver. And so, you know how that goes. He's trying to touch her, and she'd like to have a box of chocolates, you know. And she brings him a new shirt, and he says, I'd really like to have a hug. And so those things, though they're definitely in love with one another and deeply committed to one another, you're missing the element of how to really communicate love and how to receive love, you know. And so it's hugely important, I think, to recognize both what your love language is and what your partner's love language is. Just so very important. And the kids, oh my goodness, I have 3 kids. They all 3 have different love languages. And you'll find the same when you have kids as well, I'm sure. Trevor, you got any comments about kids and their love languages?
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to hit on. Like, we've talked a lot about love language in terms of like spouses and dating couples and stuff, but I feel like love language, man, that's a part of everyone. You know, if you're single, if you're a teenager, if you're like you've said, they have a kid's version for that test that your kid can take, and so yeah, it's just my oldest son, I can definitely tell, you know, he is definitely a toucher, you know, like he definitely needs, you know, that touch and that affirmation, and maybe even words of affirmation. I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to take that with him just to see what that looks like.
Wow. You know, before we started, we were playing around because Ben brought Noah with him tonight. And Noah's a big old strapping 16-year-old boy. And so he's sitting up here and we're practicing. Said, Noah, we're going to have a love language interview. Is that okay? And he's like, I guess, I don't know, yeah. So
that's what every 16-year-old wants to talk about, you know?
If I was a pretty 16-year-old girl, he'd have talked about it. I bet you on that, boy. You know, I was going to drop a name there, but that wouldn't be a good idea. I can still name drop on you, boy. I can name drop on you right now.
It's not like
I'm
she's watching, Noah. Come on, man.
Should I go ahead and name drop on him? No, okay, I won't. But anyway, so in one little brief conversation with him, I said, here they are. Do you know which one's yours? And he said, probably words of affirmation. And so you recognize, if you want to communicate, you care about Noah Hill, it's important to recognize the good thing he is and the good things he does, and say those verbally, send a text out, send a card, do whatever, find some way to verbalize, you know, in his case, and it's just builds you up in such a great way, you know, and you can choose some of the other avenues and they just don't do the same thing for him. And so I also asked him what his sister's was. And he said, guessing, probably acts of service. And here's a part of the thing that we've not really talked about. And Steph, I've been saving this little piece for you. We've also talked about before a study of the 7 deadly sins and kind of personality study called the Enneagram. And there's 9 different personalities. You can figure out which one's yours. And Steph knows all about that. And Daniel knows a lot about that. And I know some about that. Anyway, it recognizes your personality, and so you begin to understand yourself. In this situation, love language is radically different from that. Because in this situation, I know your love language. So it's not about knowing me. It's about knowing what you need.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, I have this huge pressure, though I'm not comfortable speaking to Noah and saying, Noah, I think you're a great guy, man. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of your growth and development. I love the way you've been engaged in the church all along the way. Or as a couple, just to verbalize that. You say, well, I just don't do that very well. Yeah. Guess what? If you want to communicate love, you better learn to. Right. Or maybe your spouse doesn't get it. Either, can you talk about it, Steph? Say more about that. Does it help that to be clear for people? Yeah. I don't know if I made that clear enough.
Well, I mean, I think you made that very clear, but I mean, if you're thinking about love, and love is you're going to make sacrifices, you know, and love is making that choice each day to love that person. And if you are saying, I'm making a choice to love you, I'm going to do it the way you feel loved. I'm not loving you if it's not the way that you feel it, you know. And so I think what you just said was perfect. It's about loving that person.
What if I feel like, Steph, with you, what if I feel like, I know yours is words of affirmation. What if I feel like, man, I'm just so uncomfortable saying that? What's Daniel supposed to do if he feels like, and I know he's not. Right. But what if he feels like, I'd love to tell you what I really think, but I can't.
It's good practice to like write stuff down.
Okay.
I've had people do that before.
Okay.
Like write down some of the things that you feel about that person if it's not super comfortable sitting down with them and being like, you are this, I appreciate this. And it helps you kind of get out what you really feel, because sometimes it's like, well, I know I have these big feelings about this person, but I don't always know how to, I'm not good with words. You know, people say I'm not good with how to communicate that to them. And if you write it down, a lot of times it helps just kind of help you sort your thoughts. And then it doesn't matter. You can fold it up and give it to the person. That, to me, you know, if he puts on our coffee pot in the morning just a little Post-it note saying, I hope you have a wonderful day today. I love you. I'm so proud of you. That like starts my whole day off. I'm like, man, I'm Superwoman. I can do
That's
anything.
like making coffee for me, baby. That's wonderful.
Right?
Yeah, that's good.
So even, I mean, it can be written down if that's something that is more comfortable for you to get started. Because
So one of the ways to kind of
Yeah.
pick your way into that is maybe write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Cool.
it's totally appropriate.
You know, I think it's a huge deal to recognize that love is really others-centered.
Yeah.
You know, you can say, well, it's kind of a stretch for me. I'm not really comfortable with that. And we just want to say, we just got to get over it.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that? Anything you want to share about that, Daniel? I know we've been talking all around that
Right.
issue, but
I know, like, when I first, I don't know if it's when we started dating or when we were married, but when I've talked to Steph, because she's definitely much more of an expert on all this kind of stuff because she deals with it every day, but talking to her about it is, our instinct is to love others, whether it be a friend, a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Love them how we feel loved. That's the instinct, because it's easy for us. That's how we feel loved, so we're like, well then, that's easy, because everyone else will feel loved that way too. So like you said, it's definitely, it's a selfless thing to stop and think, especially with a spouse, like, okay, that I feel loved this way, and I hope that they do this for me or love me in this way, but for them, I need to go out of my way to make sure that I'm doing this, because that's how they feel loved.
don't you, I love, you guys have done a great job already talking about this, because you made the next point or additional point or something we need to really focus on, and that is you tend to give what you want.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So Steph said earlier, you know, I come in and I just go, because words of affirmation, and that's come so easy for her, you know, or a big
I think
toucher.
with that too, if I'm telling him stories, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off,
no,
but like
you're fine.
if I'm telling him a story, sometimes I'm almost like, it's like, here's an out for you to compliment me for something I did really well today, or you know, if I handled a situation, sometimes when it's storytelling, it's like, this might open up a really good compliment or something, because that's what I need.
So you're
today.
seeking something
Oh
in
yeah,
that process.
yeah. A lot of times it is, and
Yeah.
I'll admit that 100%.
That's pretty honest.
I used to come downstairs.
Would you
in the
just call and
mornings
brag
and-
on her? Let's get this over
Right.
with, man. That's
Just come
wearing
on
me
now.
out.
Seriously, she's the expert.
Well, you could ask Timmy and Leah. I'd come down in the morning, like I get a hug and a compliment. That was the way I started my day.
He already said that in the chat, by the way. That was her
Really?
favorite. That was her favorite line growing up. I
When
need
we
a
were-
hug
yeah.
and a
Get a hug and a
compliment.
Get a hug and a compliment.
When we were
and I'm
dating,
good.
her parents would tell me that. They're like, or when we were engaged, she said, well, yeah, once you guys are married, like, she's not ours anymore. You're in charge of the hug and the compliments. Of course, they still hug her and give her compliments, but it was just a funny, like, before we even got married,
They knew.
I knew her love languages because of just stories that her parents would tell me, or like ever since growing up when she was a little girl, it was always she wanted to be touching somebody, just like her hand on somebody, or she wanted a hug from somebody, or something like that.
Is it okay that we tell one another, and we tell people, whomever out there listening, it's okay that that's what the way you communicate. I mean,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not like one of these is right and all the others are wrong. It's not like quality time is the best one, it's number one, and then, you know, gifts is number two, blah, blah, blah. There's
none
no
of them are.
priority to order of any of that. I don't know exactly how we acquired those. Certainly our family of origin had a lot to do with it. Maybe relationships growing up had a lot to do with it. It doesn't matter if yours is gifts. Hey, it's okay that your love language is gifts. It doesn't matter if it's acts of service. All those are valid ways of both expressing love and receiving love.
Right.
And we tend, that's where this is different from the Enneagram. We tend to give what we want. As you said, we tend to say, I'm a hugger. Surely she wants to be hugged.
Bob had a
Maybe
Bob,
not.
Bob, back in the chat, he said, this is a bold statement, you know, Bob can be bold. That's why marriages fail, because they are not willing to love how your spouse needs year after year. They want to give lazy love. But then he also said,
Well, that's interesting. He calls it lazy love.
Lazy love, yeah.
Which is just me doing what comes natural to me.
Right.
Okay, go
it's
ahead.
almost
makes
selfish
sense.
love. Like,
It
Yeah,
is
that's
selfish.
what
It
it
is
is.
selfish.
I'm not willing to
Your
adapt.
spouse's tank goes empty because you haven't been filling it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's cliche.
We didn't even talk that. We
No,
haven't
that's-
talked
no,
about the
that's
love
good.
tank yet.
That's
Go
good.
ahead.
He also said people weren't uncomfortable while dating because you were chasing love, doing everything possible to win them over. That's a great point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting.
Right.
You were the most beautiful, most wonderful, unbelievable thing in the whole world until I married you, and all of a sudden now you're just,
Yeah, I mean, I remember dating Jeannie, like, it first started on AOL Instant Messenger, and we would sit on AOL Instant Messenger for hours, and then cell phones became popular. Yes, that's how old I am. Cell phones became popular, and we would sit on the phone, especially when she was away at Western, and we would sit 3 hours would be nothing for us to have a conversation on the phone. I mean, I remember nights where I, like, fall asleep and wake up and like, yeah, I'm still here.
that's quality time in the day. Yeah, it's quality
That
time.
only happened a couple times.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bob, for that input, because there's a little piece in that I think Daniel spurred it in you that man, when somebody's love tank gets full,
Right.
I mean, when you have loved them in a way that they can receive it, and they feel loved, oh my goodness, what a difference it makes in a relationship. You know, and in every relationship, whether it's certainly in a married relationship or a dating relationship, but even in co-work maybe you don't fill the tank up in the same way. I don't know.
Well, right. Like I have friends in school, like we have a really tight study group and 5 guys. And I mean, love languages between us look very different, obviously, than love
Yeah,
languages
sure,
between my
sure.
wife. And so it may not be like words of affirmation where like, dude, I'm so proud of you, which it may be, but just personally, like you said, some may not be comfortable with that, but like texting them or telling them face to face after they do well on a test or something like that, like, dude, that's awesome, like, good job, like, that might be their love language. Or physical touch, like high five. Like I have one of my friends, he always gives me a high five whenever I see him. I don't know where it started, I don't know if he does that for everybody, but it just makes me like, hey, like, yeah, he's glad to see me, that kind of thing. Which is very different because that's a friendship, but love languages can be very present in a
Oh
friendship.
yeah, it's not just
Right.
a dating, marriage kind of
Right.
thing.
Yep.
Do either of you, and Steph, you probably come closest to this. Are you a part of a small group outside of your family or your spouse where you guys know one another's love languages? Any chance, coworkers, you got 4 or 5 therapists you work with, and they all know, I'm a gifter, I'm a quality timer, I'm a toucher. You have a group like that?
And they're especially like you said, the group of therapists, everyone's very like attuned to like, oh, this person needs this, and like everyone's very aware. And so they're so wonderful about knowing how to show me love. And they make sure they make a lot of efforts for it. So they even came in when all this started and they were like, Steph, are you gonna be okay not being able to hug people right now? Like, you've got to keep distance. Like, is this gonna be painful for you? And they were joking, but they were also serious. Like, this is how you greet a lot of people, but also respecting that some people are not huggers at my work. And so I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. And recognizing like, oh, I just really want to hug you right now, but that's not how you need this today. You need something different. You need me to go get a coffee and put it on your desk today, and that would be what you need. When I'm sad, I just want someone to hug me and tell me it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
But
who in
for
the
you,
world
you
would
don't
want
need
coffee
that.
rather than a hug? That's a crazy
Right?
thing I've ever
Some
heard in
people
my
are
life.
wired that way, yeah.
What did you say, Trent?
Some people are just wired that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, they are. In fact, being wired that way is perfectly okay.
And you think about people's past, and
Yeah.
I won't get into all that, but it's like
There's all
things
kinds of
to
reasons why.
avoid,
Yeah.
avoid for different love languages too.
Yeah,
and-
for you and I, Harry, like we could not fathom people not wanting to hug, right?
Yeah.
And people not wanting to like high five. But like for some people, like they've been damaged in the past by
Right.
Yeah,
stuff.
I remember one time I was in some grocery store, I think it was Kroger, and there was a guy stocking shelves. And I was just going to touch him on the shoulder and say something to ask him about someone. I mean, the dude pulled away like, whoa, don't put your hands on me. I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? I
Right.
thought he was from Mars or something. I thought the guy's... But there are people for whom that doesn't work, and guess what? That's okay.
It's okay.
There may be a real reason for why it doesn't work. I don't know. But boy, learning to give what the other person needs. I'll tell you, Anita and I just had our 40th anniversary not long ago, and I still haven't mastered that. I think it's a work in progress.
For sure.
It is.
Sometimes I'm embarrassed about how much I don't master it. How selfish I can be in what I think, what I like, what I want, what works for me, and I just get off on this kick, and before you know, I'm operating all out of and not even recognizing, wait a minute, that's not what she needs, that's not what she wants. And, Maybe you guys are a little more attuned to that because you're married to a therapist and she keeps it right in front of you all the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It's helpful. I call it therapize.
Therapize.
I made up the word, yeah. I'd like to coin that phrase. But she definitely keeps, like, growth in marriage, I think, up, like, on the forefront more than I think a lot. And I don't want to take that for granted because I think we're in a very good place because she deals with relationships at work a lot, whether it be marriage relationships when she was in grad school or kids and their family relationships now. But just now she's able to bring that to our marriage and kind of like keep us growing and like notice different things, and I think it's very helpful, yeah.
Man, it takes a
There's
huge,
her word of affirmation.
Yeah.
My head got bigger.
Getting them brownie
Pick that
points.
up?
Yeah, oh, I did.
Getting them brownie points,
My eyes
Harry.
glistened
Live
a
here
little
on
bit,
Friday
yeah.
Night Live.
Yeah, I noticed that. Wow. You know, it's so unselfish. It's just amazing. Which is makes it uniquely Christian in my mind. You know, it's one thing to say in the Enneagram, well, I'm a number 8 and I'm strong and I just can't help myself. It's the way I operate. And if you don't like it, get over it because this is who I am. It's the way I'm wired, and that's just the way it is. So if we're going to have a relationship, you have to deal with my boldness and my brashness and my root sin of lust, because that's just the way I'm just going to get my way. That's one way to look at who we are.
So when you're dealing with these 5 love languages, throw a little spiritual flavor into that, Harry. Like, talk to us about, in a Christian perspective and a spiritual practice for us, like how can these help, right? Does God give us certain love languages for a reason? I mean, like, talk to me about that.
Ooh.
Should we be more aware of our love languages or other people's love languages in a
Okay,
spiritual
I'm going to do the
sense?
best I can to address that. I don't know if I can
address.
address it perfectly. I wonder if I could get close in that Mark 10:45 basically states, I should be able to quote it, something like, Christ came to give his life. You know, Philippians 2:3 says, don't be selfish and self-conceited, but look at others as better than yourself. So all the tenor of Scripture is about really being aware of the other. Now, I would say at the same time, 1 John 4:18 says, because God so loved us, we love one another. And I've wrestled with that for a long time. Like, you got to feel love before you're able to love. And you can argue with that if you want. But I'm telling you right now, when I feel empty and not loved, I'm not a good lover. That's the love tank you're talking about.
Yeah.
Man, if I can feel loved and know the love of God in particular, and because God so loved us, out of that we are literally able to love one another. So I think the call is huge to do that. And I think Gary Smalley did us a flavor, and he gave us a little tool that says, hey, this person may need that.
Right.
So get outside of your conceited, self-aware position and just literally do what they need, you know. And you guys may have thoughts about that. I mean, the kind of spiritual, biblical side of that thing. Anything you want to add to that?
I definitely think God like puts couples together. I think, and just different pieces of them work best with different pieces of like Steph work with me. And like you said earlier, you said love languages can complement one another. So if mine's quality time, and hers is physical touch, like we said, if we're watching TV or something like that, that can be quality time because we're just together.
Yeah.
There's no distractions. Our phones are away. We're not worried about work, school, nothing like that. But then she can be sitting right next to me and have my arm around her or something like that. And that's giving her love language, and I'm getting my love language. And it complements one another. But then we also, since both of ours, we've joked, since both of ours, our love language, our second love language, our words of affirmation, we said it's just a house full of compliments. But of course, it's not always like that. So we always need to be, not that we're experts at it, we know each other's love languages, then we're going to be great at it. It's definitely a daily thing. It's not easy.
Good. Yeah, it has been for us too.
Right.
So if she's wearing an outfit that looks terrible, you just tell her, oh, it's beautiful, right? You just lie to her.
Right.
That's right.
Okay, all right. Just want to be clear about that. I think it's a great tool for therapy, and it's a great tool for friendships and relationships and parenting and for couples. It's just a great tool that says, get beyond yourself and do what the other person needs. I remember one time, I don't know, Daniel, I don't think you would have been here, but you may have been, Steph. One time we did this event in the gym. I'll never get over that event in the gym. And I asked Sandra Blakely to teach a class. And we walked through this and walked through event, maybe Monday, Thursday or something. Yeah, it was probably Monday, Thursday. Because Monday, Thursday means Commandment Thursday, which is, the commandment is love one another. So Sandra Blakely, dressed up like a teacher, took them in this room, had them all set up in classrooms, and wanted to teach people to be able to say, I love you. I don't know if you've noticed how hard it is for people to say, I love you. Now they'll say, love you, or appreciate you, or whatever. But just to be able to literally say, I love you is a huge challenge. I find it to be a challenge at times in my own life. And this even takes that a step further and says, take that I love you. And Daniel's having a hard time with his mic. Man.
Tuck that away, guy. Come on.
Yeah, come on. We need the astronaut John Glenn to come help us. John, will you come help us, man? Now, you take that challenge of I love you to the next level and say it. And I want to express that in a way that you can get it. You know, you can get it. And I think it's just a great tool and can be very helpful. And I think Bob's right. It's easy to do the lazy love, which you call lazy love, which means I'm just going to do what feels comfortable to me.
Right.
And maybe that doesn't fit at all, you know. So
Bob says, my language is gifts, so I give different ways to Jesus. When I do, I feel his love for me.
yeah, interesting. His language is gifts. On the little test, I retook the computer test today.
Yeah.
I shouldn't tell this, but I'm going to.
Do it.
My gift.
Why shouldn't you tell this? Because you're nervous that
Because
everybody's
I'll
going to
never
know?
get any gifts again. Because my gift
right.
percentage is 0.
So is mine.
0,
Yeah,
Steph.
it's
And you give me
So
a
is
gift,
mine.
it don't mean beans. I mean,
Yeah.
literally. It doesn't, it's just 0. However, Nathan, our youngest son, his love language is gifts. And so if you want to communicate, you really love Nathan, give him a gift. You know, and I'm like, wait a minute, I got 0 in that. You know, so the likelihood that I'll take my 0 and turn it into a gifting kind of expression of love is very, very, very small.
Yeah.
Unless I work at that,
Right.
I'll miss his primary love language. And I feel guilty even sitting here saying that because I don't do real well expressing that in terms of gifts,
Yeah.
you know.
I've
So-
wondered if, like, growing up, do kids see how their parents, their siblings love in their love languages, and that kind of forms? Because I can see I'm pretty sure, I've never talked to my parents about it, but just growing up in their home, I can definitely see, I think my mom's is words of affirmation, I think my dad's is physical touch, and that kind of makes up mine now. And so I've wondered, like, does seeing it as a child growing up, does that kind of form how you feel loved as an adult? I don't know, does it?
Well, we would let the trained therapist answer that, except she's going to give us this long expression.
Right.
That affects everything, doesn't it, Stephanie?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that.
I don't know that it's
I don't think it has to be, but I mean, there is definitely.
the impact of all that is
yeah,
significant.
but you can also have very different from that. But I think it's if you saw that in a positive light,
Right.
then you're like, oh, I see this, and I like that how it feels, and I like how it looks to them. So you saw your parents honoring each other that way. But for some, if it wasn't as much of a positive thing, they may not. But yeah.
I want to ask one question. Never thought about this part of it before. You kind of alluded to it earlier, Stephanie. It's interesting to think about this. If you are a toucher, for instance, and you, again, you alluded to it, sometimes we can kind of manipulate to try to get that. You know, or if you need words of affirmation, you just try to, without coming right out. I remember one time one of the kids was small and they said, we'll throw darts and you say good shot. You know, it's kind of like, I'm going to tell you exactly what I need.
Right.
We're not that bold. We don't go up and say, I need a hug and a compliment. Now, you did coming down the steps of the Miller household, but sometimes we kind of go back door. In chemistry, we call it the backdoor attack. You know, it happens in carbon atoms, but we'll talk about that another time. Anyway, we come in back door and say, inadvertently, would you please compliment me? Would you say? I have a tendency sometimes after I preached to say, well, what'd you get out of the sermon today? And it's just like fishing.
Right.
Right.
Give me those words that I need so badly, you know. And I think fishing, one of the things I learned from Jeannie, my daughter, is if you fish with her, she's not going to give it to you. Is that right, Trev?
Yeah. She's a wise woman, so yeah.
You can't fish with her. And I think a lot of people know when you're fishing.
Right.
Yeah.
And fishing is selfish, man. Once again, it's like, I really need you to say I'm a good guy and that you think I did a good job this morning. And so I'm going to call some people that I know trust me and believe in me and know my motives are good and are going to brag on me. And you fish.
Right.
Yeah.
And you tend to avoid people that you know you'll never catch a fish in their pond. You know, I'm not going to ask Daniel because he's not going to say anything. He's going
You
to
go
say,
to people who you know are going to give you
that's
what you need
exactly
in that
right.
time.
So you end up building relationships on people that you can.
But again, that's when you're focused.
Oh, yeah,
on,
man.
I need
It's
this right
all
now, I need
selfish.
this.
It's all
It
in the
seems
wrong
pretty
direction.
negative. Is that a pretty negative place to be? Like, what would you say to that, Steph? Like,
If I'm constantly like
if
needing,
you're constantly
I
fishing.
think that's probably a sign that you're not getting that
Oh, okay,
enough.
that's a good
You know,
point, yeah.
maybe it's, and there's are appropriate ways to communicate that. You know, without going backdoor. Because I have found that being just upfront and honest so much better than me trying to go around. Because if he doesn't know that's what I'm trying to do, and then I walk away from that conversation without it, then it's just like, it's like a slap. It's like, okay, but he didn't know, like, oh, okay, she needed that in that time. So I find it much better if you can say, not necessarily, I need a compliment right now. You know, like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Like, I'm really struggling, not feeling adequate right now. Maybe that's the message that you need to hear. But there's ways.
What if he
that,
says?
like, but
What if
there's
he
things
just?
that I can't always depend on him for.
That's right.
He's not perfect, and I can't expect him to be.
Shoot.
I know, right? And I can't expect him to be. So
He
if
needs
I'm,
some words of
if I'm
affirmation right
looking-
now.
If I'm looking only from him and not to God for who I am, then that's when I'm going to feel empty. And that's when I'm going to be searching from humans to get that filled up.
See, she's doing better than I am, and that's good,
great.
Steph, because
That's good.
so often in a relationship, you depend on a spouse
Oh, yeah.
to do something that's way beyond what they're capable of
You
doing.
can't meet those
No,
expectations.
it's not
Yeah,
fair.
one time, years and years and years ago, I expressed that in a silly little piece of poetry I wrote. I remember it said, I went to a car lot to buy a loaf of bread. And you get there like, oh, what do you mean? That's not what you know, it's like going to the wrong place for those needs. And again, that's where Jeannie would say, I can't be the sole source of meeting your needs
needs,
and
yeah.
your expectations. You just can't do it.
That's a lot of pressure on that other person as well.
Oh, yeah.
To live up to that, to be that consistently, constantly, like that wears a person out.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, they get to the point where they say, I'm just not going to do that. And,
Right.
and you
And
begin to notice it. You begin to see, wait a minute, you're fishing again. Why don't you go fish somewhere?
Right, yeah.
And to find your needs met spiritually is a huge blessing. And I didn't think you can receive from others a little more freely when you're not quite so needy.
Absolutely.
And so I love all that. I think that's all good and wonderful. And so maybe we could just encourage one another to say, be aware. And if you work with a group that'd be open to it, you know,
Yeah.
send them online, tell them to take the quiz, and we'll talk about it. Or if you, as a couple or in a dating relationship, never considered that, man, take the little quiz and talk about it and say, how can I be more sensitive to what you need? That's really foreign in that's foreign in our culture, you know.
It is.
Yeah, just ask. I mean, like, if you don't know if you're talking to a friend, or probably more likely in a relationship or a dating relationship or a marriage or something like that, just ask, like, what's your love language? Or, like, how do you feel loved? When do you feel appreciated? That kind of thing. Because then, I mean, right there, you're showing that you actually care and that you're going to try harder to love them better that way. So.
And trying's worth a whole lot, even if it's done imperfectly.
Oh my goodness.
Man, trying's worth a
Just
whole
seeing that
lot.
they're trying to do that
Oh
is
yeah,
huge.
yeah. Oh, it's just like,
Huge.
I'll take that. You know,
It's
I'll
almost
take,
it's like, okay, that's as good as, because I know that you're
exactly.
searching
I think
for
either one. It doesn't matter which one it is. If you've just demonstrated, I'm really trying to reach out to you in a way that's meaningful. Man, people take it.
Absolutely.
People take it. I love
And
that.
I think that's why it's so important for my life to know Jesus, because he's ultimately the person that showed us what that selfless love looks like,
Yeah.
right? Because ultimately that's what we're talking about.
Ultimately, that's what we're talking
We have
about.
to improve how we deal with love in terms of I can't always want how I experience love, right? But Jesus teaches us, man, it's not about that. It's not about you.
I'm glad you said that, Trev,
Yeah.
because you made me think about the whole idea of Jesus love or agape love. It's the kind of love that says, he doesn't love Stephanie because she's young and beautiful and married to Daniel and has a career helping others, or she got up this morning and had a little quiet time and prayed. He loves Stephanie because he loves Stephanie. It's not based on you, it's based on him. You know, and wow, if we can get out of that, I got to earn it.
Right.
You know, and not treat one another like, I'm still guilty of some of that, feeling like I have to earn Stephanie's love, or I have to earn Daniel's love, you know, and to be able to receive that God so freely loves us, we begin to be able to do others the same way. That's a joy. It's a joy. It's a journey, but it's a joy,
Absolutely.
and I love that. Well, anything else you guys want to throw into this conversation before we wrap this down? Did you notice that little twist in there? Say wrap
That's
that down.
fun. I like this conversation. It's good.
I do too.
Very practical.
I love the fact that, and as I thought about a young couple that might come and talk about it, that I could get you guys, because I knew that you were aware of the issue. I wasn't aware that you've talked about it as much as you have, and how much it's a part of your home and your family. I even today, I became so excited about this thing because it's really based on you, not on me.
Right.
And so many, it seems like now spiritual tools are based on, well, what's your giftedness and,
That's good.
and where do you have the
point.
kind, you know, it's operating out of your strengths rather than operating out of what his needs are.
Absolutely.
And man, that's a challenge, I think, a good challenge. So it's
I
good.
think it's important to add that these type of tools are important in our lives. Like for example, I know when you marry people, you make sure to recommend, I don't know if you twist their arm, but you recommend some premarital counseling.
Yeah.
And one of the tools that you use is the 5 love languages
Yeah,
quiz
that's right.
to talk, and because I think it's how important it is.
I think it is.
You know, because that's something that we all could use and get a little help in. So I definitely, like when I have married people as well now, I use that same tool because it's that, I feel like it's pretty helpful.
Yeah.
You know, if you come to my little study place, which is in the garage, there's a windowsill right there so I can see all the cars that come by early in the morning. There's 3 or 4 things on the windowsill very significant. It's silly that I think of this right now, but there is a sticker off of a Starbucks cup from 2 Christmases ago. Early one morning, Trevor brought me a cup of coffee from Starbucks. And I put that sticker there, and I've never forgotten the generosity of that cup. Silly, you know. And there's 2 or 3 other things. There's a little marble up there that reminds me of something else. And there's just 2 or 3 little pieces up there. And I think it's not a bad thing to put some touchstones somewhere that you can, you know, you can physically. There's a quarter up there. And the quarter it reminds me, there's probably at least 25 people that are pretty close to you in your life that you need not lose touch with. And so little markers and reminders that just say, you know, however works for you. For me, it's the physical little things that I can see and remember. And man, all that stuff is so helpful along the way. And so it's good. It's good. Trev, any other questions Stephanie needs to answer before we get done?
I think we've done good tonight. I think the conversation as well. A lot of people have already said they've really enjoyed tonight. And that's my hope and prayer is that people
Absolutely.
can get some help out of the conversations that we have.
I really want to encourage anybody that's listening and is remotely interested, man, go online and take the little quiz.
Yeah.
I love it. And you just Google quizzes dash the 5 love languages. It'll give you 3 or 4 different versions there. And you can use them and share them with whomever you feel like you want to have a better relationship with, and have the conversation. And it can be a great tool, especially, I think, especially for couples
Yeah.
and for parents.
Yeah. I think the 5 love languages even has an app.
They do have.
Yeah, it's called Love Nudge.
That's right.
So I think there's some different tools in there to even
Ah.
use.
Like different ways. I think
Different
I've heard of that where
Yeah.
it'll like give you different ideas. Like if your spouse, like physical touch, like different ways for physical touch, or words of affirmation, different things. Like, hey, today
Really?
comment
Really?
about this aspect of
Stephanie
that.
doesn't have that on her phone? What's your deal, Steph? Come on. You pick
the
up your
times.
game, girl. Pick up your game. Wow. What's it called, Trev?
Love Nudge.
Love Nudge. So if you're a smartphone user, and everybody watching is probably, look at that app, and it may be something that would help you to, just have a kind of concrete reminder to do that. And boy, the heart of Christianity is not about you. It's about Him, and when it gets about Him, it gets about other people, and that's a really, really sweet thing. So I hope if there's a relationship in which you're struggling, most of the time, when I'm struggling in a relationship, it's because I have too much focus on me.
Absolutely.
Not every time. Occasionally somebody just is really ugly to me. It happened once in 63 years, something like that. But most of the time when I'm struggling in a relationship, it's because I'm too focused on me. And so may the Lord help us to not just be focused on us. And, so I want to offer a little prayer, and then we'll be on our way, okay? Thank you for joining Friday night with us, first of all. Lord, thank you that Jesus was the premier modeler of how to love others. And He left that model and challenge for us. And thank you to Gary Small. He gave us a little tool and said, here are some of the kind of things that really minister to others and make a difference. And they get it when you do that. And I pray you'd help us not to forgive that. Pray you'd forgive us. You may want to pray that prayer with me. Lord, I pray you'd forgive us for our selfishness. So often, I'm the number one guy on my agenda, and I pray you teach us how to not be selfish, but to know the love of God and to be trained by your Spirit to love others in a way that's just such a blessing. Help us to do that in our homes, with our spouses and our family. Help us to do it at work. Help us to do it in relationships that are difficult. And may this little tool and this little evening together, and Stephanie and Daniel, somehow push us forward. Thank you for everyone that joined tonight or will listen somewhere along the way. Pray that you would teach us to love more effectively. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And everybody out there said, amen.